Hello everyone, it is me, the Goof King. Yeah, I know I've been gone for a little while, but you know, I don't got any excuses. But what I do have is a new model to show you all. That being the Wei Yuan from Motor Nuclear. Now, before we get into the actual model itself, it's probably a good idea for me to give you all some context. That being where this model comes from. Because unlike the previous model I reviewed, the Tastier, this one actually comes from its own story. That being the story known as Legend of the Star General? Wait, is it Legends or The Legend? What I found, it says Legend of the Star General, so I'm assuming that's what it is. But it doesn't really matter. What does matter is what this comic is, that being a manhwa. I think that's how it's pronounced. It's basically a Chinese comic book similar to a manga or a manhwa, except instead of having high school students beat each other up or having isekais where you're ripped into another universe, this one has meditation and isekai slop. I'm gonna be honest, it's impossible to escape. Because, given time, all will succumb to the slop. But getting on to the actual story itself, we follow the main protagonist, Song Yuzhong. The story begins with him fighting in this final battle against these monster creatures that come out of this rift thing. In the fight, he sacrifices himself, leading to his death. But of course he doesn't die, but instead comes back younger, stronger, and better than before. The rest of the story follows his wacky and awesome adventures as he becomes a drug lord, selling his concoctions to the sad, lonely, and elderly population to turn them all into Leonardo DiCaprio. Basically, the premise of this entire story is the stereotypical isekai situation where someone's sent to a different location. But instead of it being into another fantasy world, this one is where the protagonist is sent back in time with the previous knowledge that they've learned. But while other stories use things like magic or, the good old firearm, this one actually has mechs. It also kinda has magic. They have like this whole cultivation thing. I'm gonna be honest with you. I did not read through the entire thing. I found a YouTube video that did like a recap of it, which is like 40 hours long. Because as a model builder, I don't like to read. But even after watching that entire video all the way through, I'm still quite lost on some of the points. It gets a little crazy. I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying I don't know what happened exactly in the story. But something I do remember in the story is how they summon their mechs using these green card things. I can actually quite relate to it because, like them in the story, when they pull out this card, they can summon a fully sized mech. I can do that, but instead of a fully sized mech, I get a bunch of tiny plastic mechs. And also credit card debt.
Where is it? Where's the rest? The money, Skylar. Where is the rest? Where is the money?
Plastic.
What? You did what?
Please just hear me out, please.
And now that I've given you some context to where this model comes from, I can actually start getting into the actual model and what you get with it, starting with its packaging. When it comes to boxes, this is a pretty standard one. On the sides, you get this cool art and displays of different poses it can hit, plus accessories and other things it gets. However, something noteworthy is the box material it's made out of. While the front cover piece is made out of the normal stuff, the actual box pieces seem to be made out of cardboard, instead of the usual paper box that we see a lot in the model world. Inside the box, other than the model and the manual it comes with, it also comes with this tiny secondary box, which holds something very, very important to the model. I'm not going to get into it right now, but when I get into the model itself, it's going to make a lot of sense why they had to package it separately. Now with the box explained, it's about time we get into the actual model itself. When first looking at this model, you might actually find some comparison to another green mech unit shown in popular media, that being the Zaku, which isn't really an unfair comparison to make, considering both mechs fulfill a similar purpose in each of their individual stories, that being the role of either cannon fodder or being used by background characters who don't have their own special units. Because of this, the model is priced relatively low compared to the other ones in this line, being around $40 in price. And when I'm talking about price, these things can get incredibly expensive, with some of the higher ones reaching over $500.
Quit's been hit! Call an ambulance!
Hell no! I'm broke as fuck!
Squidward, you require immediate medical attention! We can't let you get away!
I'm not paying that damn bill!
To be honest though, I feel like the price could possibly be worth it, considering how much effort and time they put into their own grunt suit models. If we go back to that tiny box I showed you in the unboxing section of the video, this box is used to hold its internal skeleton, which is completely made out of metal. This not only makes the joints much more secure and stronger than usual ones, it also gives the model itself a decent amount of heft for its size. And speaking of size, this model is around 7 to 8 inches tall, being about the same size as a master grade. For a size comparison, here's the Wei Yuam next to the high grade Goof Custom, the master grade Goof, and of course my last review, the Tastier from Oxen. However, the first thing that you will definitely notice about this model when you first look at it is its design, and more so how unique it is compared to others. Like for an example, this face that is on the stomach of the model. It kind of resembles a Chinese guardian lion statue face, or at least that's what it reminds me of. There is also a face on this item, which I will be talking about later in the video. The reasons for these design choices is because this mech is actually based off of traditional or fantasy traditional Chinese armor, which is considerably different compared to the usual ones we see with like Gundam, and how they're based off of Japanese samurai. This is actually something I really like to see in the model kit space. Usually, models are based off of either Japanese samurai or medieval knights, while there's a bunch of other cultures which haven't even been touched by the space. Even for like third-party kits, they usually stick to around Gundam-like designs, which this line also does. I just feel like we are missing out on a lot of opportunities for some really cool design choices. Just imagine all the different types of possibilities we can create if we didn't limit ourselves to these few groups. Imagine the different cultures that we can create models based off of. For example, traditional Korean armor, or Aztec, even Nordic, and of course, the very famous and elusive Englishman. Just imagine if we release ourselves from the chains of this self-inflicted restriction. Just imagine the perfection we can create. The design also lets it hit some pretty cool poses, which is totally not me trying to create a segue into the articulation segment. But on an unrelated note, neck bob and twist, arm rotation, arm bend, leg rotation, leg bend, and finally, foot rotation. Most likely because of the metal inner frame, this model is very posable, being able to pull off many dynamic and quite unique poses. Plus, since the interframe and the joints are made of metal, You don't really have to worry about it breaking as easily as other pieces like plastic or polycaps. One problem that I have is this loincloth piece. I think that's what it's called, at least. It's made out of a hard plastic, which means that it's not going to look really good when you try putting him in certain poses. But thankfully, the manufacturer thought of this and gave us these two different loincloth pieces. That way, when we put the model in more dynamic poses, the loincloth isn't stiff. But now that I've talked about the loincloth pieces, it's about time I get on to the rest of the model's accessories that you get. Starting off with the hands. The many, many hands. You only actually get a few pieces that let you build the hands in their entirety, so for the rest of the pieces you gotta keep them somewhere. For me, I keep them in the bag of hands. I'm also not going to really build all of them. There's like one or two I think that I haven't built, but I can show you the majority of them. Starting off with these open hands, really open hands, which are slightly different than the first open hands. You also get these like closed finger open palm hands. I believe other than those three I showed you, there are 4 other pairs of hands, 2 being used to hold the other 2 accessories I'm about to talk about, and 2 being used for like posing with the next accessory I'm going to be talking about. That next accessory being the sword that you get, which is not only quite sharp, I've poked myself off it a few times, it is also most likely based off this traditional Chinese sword called the Jian. And I have to say that this sword fits this model quite well. And combined with his aesthetics, hand options, and his insane posability, makes this sword feel a lot more than it actually is. Not to mention the sculpting on it, which is quite good. Of course, you can't always rely on a sword in every situation, and thankfully this model kit comes with the ultimate duo of weapons and equipment, that being a shield. In particular, this shield right here, which has this pretty cool sculpt on it, which I found to be really cool. The model has 3 ways to equip this shield to the model itself, with the first one that I'm showing off being this handlebar method, which, to be honest, I'm not a big fan of. This piece lets the model hold the shield kind of like a buckler from medieval Europe. How this piece works is simply by grabbing the ballpoint end of the piece. You can connect it into the hole that's in the back of the shield, connecting the shield to the model. However, for some reason, I couldn't get mine to be held properly by the model, because the tab that you use to slide in the piece wouldn't function for me. I think it was human error and not a problem with the model, because it works for everything else. But for me, I just don't enjoy it. The next piece we have for the shield is this one right here, which instead of connecting to the hand, connects to the arm. This works by simply going to the arm and removing this armor pad, and inserting the piece into the hole that's left there. Me personally, I think this works a lot better than the hand piece that we get. This not only frees up one hand for the model to hold something else, subtle foreshadow, but it also gives the model the ability to hit some really unique poses. I personally prefer this method over the other one. And for our final piece, we get a slightly longer version of the previous piece that we had. It functions relatively the same way, except it moves the shield slightly up, covering the hand. Me personally, this is my favorite setup out of the 3 because it gives protection to the hand much more than the previous 2. However, for some reason or another, you may not want the model to hold the shield, but still want the shield on the model itself. Thankfully, this model has a solution to that, and it comes with its own self-storing option for the shield to be held by the model when not in use. All you need to do is simply turn the shield around and go to that hole that we used to connect the shield to the holding pieces, and then simply insert it into this back ballpoint piece, which comes with the model. By doing so, it creates this back protecting shield, which also gives it the ability to store it as well. Although the shield and sword are both pretty nice, unless if you're planning to do a Captain America,
Think fast, Chuckle Nuts!
you're going to need a bit more of a longer reaching weapon to deal with your opponents. Thankfully, this model comes with this crossbow gun, which also can open up like this. This crossbow is a pretty good weapon to have against anyone who is at a distance from you. And if you combine all three of the weapons, it gives the model a well-armored infantry soldier look. And like the sword, this weapon also has a lot of similarities to a real-world weapon, that being the Chinese repeating crossbow. But with all these weapons, you might be wondering to yourself, what happens if I don't want to pose this model in a combat pose? Well, thankfully, this model does come with these parts as well, which lets you store each weapon on the model itself. All you need to do is simply remove this thigh armor piece and insert the peg into the hole. By doing so, you gain the ability to equip the sword like it would be on a sword belt. If you want to, you can also equip the sword on this back peg that's located at the back of the waist of the model. You can also equip the crossbow here too. But if neither of these options are to your liking, you can use this piece and switch it out for the back ballpoint piece that you use to hold the shield, and equip either the shield or the crossbow to the back of the model. By combining all methods of self-storage, you can change the feel of the model completely, from a battle-readied warrior to a soldier in standby, guarding, or simply taking a break. But with that said, that wraps up the equipment segment of the model review. While not as much as others, it is a decent arsenal for this model to wield. Although that doesn't mean that we are done with the accessories, because there's still something else we need to talk about. Because if you were paying attention during my recap of the story, you may have noticed that these models are very expressionate. And by expressionate, I mean they are very, very expressionate. Thankfully though, if you ever had the desire to recreate some of these iconic poses and expressions that these models make, this model kit comes with pieces so you can do just that. To equip these new faceplates, all you need to do is simply go to the side panels on the side of the face, remove them, and then switch them out. For the faces that you do get, you first get this default face, which I've been using for the majority of the video. But other than that one, you also get this open eye face one. While in the original story, it's used as a shocked face, it can be used as much more given the certain circumstances, like fear or surprise, and of course my favorite expression out of them all, the face you make after you open the doors to the Yellow King's chambers. The next face you get is this blushing face, which can be used to represent nervousness, either by getting a compliment from someone, 2, full-blown stage fright, and of course, my personal use for it, the freak. And for our final face, we have this one, which I have lovingly deemed the war face.
That's a war face! Now let me see your war face! Ah! Bullshit!
After one look at this model's face, you can probably see why I call it the war face. From it either being the expression of a soldier giving a battle cry as he charges into war, or the face of standing over the one who has ruined your life. It fits many roles. Now that we have looked at that face, I have to apologize to you. For you see, I have lied. There is actually one more face that we have to talk about. That being this blank face. The reason why I didn't really have much to talk about is that I have no idea what this face is used for. Probably representing some sort of like offstage, or being dead. Maybe the face works like that good cop, bad cop character from the Lego movie where you have to draw on it with Sharpie. And with that, that's all the faces you get. And technically all the accessories, although this model does indeed come with its own stand. However, unlike the previous review, which came with a bunch of different features that the stand held, this one is pretty basic, but still functions decently well. Other than having the ability to move the peg piece, it also has the ability to extend or descend a decent amount. However, do be warned that the peg that you need to put in the model, which by the way is in a very awkward spot, it also is a very tight fit. That's what she said. It also is incredibly difficult to get out. Mine has been stuck in the model since 2024.
Whatever you're eating right now probably shouldn't go in your face hole.
Which hole should it go in?
Somebody please help me. There's a lasagna in my ass and I don't...
The model also comes with these water slide decals, which you can put on the shoulder pad to number them. But me personally, I prefer it without them on. I just personally like how blank it looks, making it seem more like a rank and file soldier rather than some sort of like stick out soldier or something like that. But with that said, that's everything that this model comes with. While not nearly as much as the previous review I did, the Tastier, which came with a ton of different weapons and stuff, this model didn't come with as much. But where it lacks in accessories that this model has, it more than makes up for it with its amazing posability and feel. But with that said, it is about time we wrap this video up, and how we're going to wrap it up is simply by scoring the kit. Now, if you don't remember how we score the kits, which I don't blame you, the scoring system works in 3 categories: enjoyment, presentation, and of course difficulty, with the first 2 relying on the highest score being the better one, while the last one works with a 10 being the most difficult and a 1 being the easiest. But with that said, it is about time we start the scoring on the Wei Yuam. For my personal enjoyment, I give it a 10. For presentation, I give it a 7. And for difficulty, I give it a 5. That leading the final score of the Wei Yuam to a 90%. For me, I really enjoyed this kit. It's not only decently cost effective, considering other models in that same size range, but it also does a lot of things that I don't really see too often in the model kit community. Due to those factors, I would highly recommend this model kit to anyone who is looking for something around the size of a master grade. I'm also probably going to change the scoring system up later down the road, mainly because this model scored the exact same score as the Tastier, which when I noticed showed me some flaws in my current scoring system. But with that said, that's the end of the video. I hope you all enjoyed this review. Hopefully I'll be able to get one out again this year. No promises, honestly. And, yeah. Like and subscribe, normal YouTuber outro stuff. Do a little dance and leave a comment. I don't really care. But, yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.